Today, I would like to take up disease of the external ear. The disease of the external ear, let us begin with congenital diseases. We come across people having small nodules in front of the ear, and some people also might have a small opening, very small opening before the auricle. If you apply pressure, it may be oozing out some whitish cheesy material in some individuals. These are preauricular tags and preauricular pits. Preauricular tags, small nodules, one or two, you may see. They are asymptomatic, but these preauricular pits or preauricular sinuses, sometimes they produce trouble. They get infected and there may be abscess formation and it needs to be drained also. Now, what are these preauricular tags or pits? Generally, if you recall the embryology of the ear, around 6th week of intrauterine life, 6 tubercles appear around the first branchial cleft. An auricle develops from the second arch because of the fusion of 5 tubercles. Whereas from the first arch, the tragus of the ear develops. All the 6 tubercles, they all fuse and form the pinna. During this fusion, if some defect arises, then the preauricular tags, preauricular sinuses, they result. As I have just mentioned, if there is infection, repeated infections, then there is no point in making the patient suffer. We can operate. We give an encircling incision around the sinus opening with superior and inferior extensions, and carefully you can instill some methylene glue into the sinus so that you can see the track, or even with the digital palpation, the track will be slightly indurated. So it is important to excise the whole tract intact. Once you delineate the whole tract, mobilize it and excise it and ligate the stump, then the recurrence rate will be very low. Preauricular tags asymptomatic, at the most they are of cosmetic significance, you can excise them, no problem. Now the importance of these congenital defects is, sometimes it may be associated with some other defects in the body that we have to keep in mind. Something might be there in the heart, something might be there in the lung, in the kidney. Just have an idea about them. If there is a congenital defect somewhere, we have to look for other congenital defects elsewhere in the body. That is the significance. In general, they have nothing to do with hearing. These things have nothing to do with hearing. Coming to the other congenital abnormalities of the pinna, in the first picture you see there is anoxia, that is the entire pinna is absent. That condition is called anoxia. The second picture, the pinna is there but it is smaller in size. That is called microtia. The third picture is the pinna is larger than usual size. We call it as macrotia. Once again, these conditions have to be evaluated and suitable treatment has to be given. If there is macrotia, you can incise an elliptical portion from behind and stitch it back so that the pinna comes to normal size, just for cosmetic appearance. In the same way, even microtia also can be helped by reconstruction, and the most important is the anotia. Anotia, generally it is said, as is your external ear, so is your inner ear. You have to make a thorough search of inner ear abnormalities, if any, in these conditions by doing a CT scan. CT scan gives a very powerful message of what is the situation in the inner ear. You can get a MRI done or a CT scan done. If there is anotia, if the parents insist, you can do a pinnoplasty, take a cartilage from the rib graft and make it like the cartilage of the pinna, and you can prepare it, and then you put it, or you make an incision in the region of the pinna and keep it underneath and wait for some time, apply powerful suction, then automatically the skin will be draped over this cartilaginous framework. It gives appearance of a pinna. Of course, it doesn't have the axonotary canal and all, just for appearance. Now, let us go back to the next slide, then we will come here. This is bat ears. See, the ears, they are very, very prominent and unsightly. This can be helped. So many people, they will be very, very particular that these bat ears should be corrected. Once again, an elliptical portion can be excised and sutured back. This is called Treacher-Collins syndrome. What is Treacher-Collins syndrome? Number one, there will be hypoplasia of the maxilla, and there will be hypoplasia of the mandible, microtia or anoxia, and in addition to that, there will be a lower motor neuron facial paralysis. All these things put together, it forms Treacher-Collins syndrome. Now, if a patient of Treacher-Collins syndrome or even a patient of only isolated microtia or anoxia, I mean, if you examine them carefully, and if there is hearing loss, significant hearing loss, especially bilateral profound hearing loss is there in a newborn child, it should not be taken lightly. Why? Because how am I able to talk? Because I have heard my parents in my childhood speaking to me. I heard their speech and I imitated. Speech is nothing but imitation of speech. So because I had my parents speak, my hearing sense is intact. I try to reproduce it and develop speech. In the same way, for any child to develop speech, he should have normal hearing or near normal hearing. That too before maximum 3 years of age. If you don't develop speech before 3 years, 2.5 years, the auditory speech center in the brain, it will disappear. Just like a plot of land, if it is unattended, it will be occupied by your neighbor. Just like that, the nearby visual cortex will occupy the auditory center, and whatever you do subsequently, it is very, very hard to get the speech. So it is of paramount importance to recognize, evaluate, and rehabilitate the hearing loss as early as possible, as early as 6 months, 4 months. Once you diagnose a bilateral profound hearing loss on both sides, then the child must be given a powerful hearing aid and speech should be stimulated. Of course, simple hearing aid and speech therapy, they do help. If you give them proper speech training, even though they may not speak like you and me, at least they will not develop mental retardation. You can send them to normal school and they do very well, even though their speech is defective. Generally, what parents say, sir, we use hearing aid, it is not useful, my child is not speaking, so we stop using. It is very, very wrong on the part of the parents. Because once the child doesn't hear, he will not develop speech. Once there is no hearing and no speech, they develop mental retardation, which is a burden to the family as well as to the society. This is about congenital hearing loss. In general, I am speaking. Coming back to the anosmia, generally for these individuals, the inner ear will be normal. Inner ear function will be normal. So they do have some sort of hearing. If you give a hearing aid, it will be very, very helpful for them. Now, how will you put a hearing aid for them? There is no pinna at all. Where do we keep it? So for them, what is known as BAHA, that is bone anchored hearing aid, can be very, very useful. This bone anchored hearing aid has got one abutment made up of titanium screws. So they introduced titanium screws, 2-3 screws in the post-auricular region. Once they get healed, the hearing aid can be just applied to them. It is there inside the hair, hardly seen by anybody. And it acts very, very powerfully. Child will have more or less normal hearing and normal speech and everything. Next condition is hematoma auris. This is otherwise known as pseudocyst. There will be fluctuant swelling in relation to the pinna. Generally, it is painless, and unless you know the proper management, you will be doing great injustice to the patient. The treatment is very simple: aspiration and pressure bandage, or aspiration and a figure of 8 suture. But everything should be done under strict aseptic precautions. If you don't take strict aseptic precautions, patient will go in for perichondritis, and there will be the entire pinna will shrink and become very, very unsightly. It become like a nodule, other than a pugilistic ear or caliper ear. Next common entity is foreign bodies. Very, very frequently in children, the parents observe some foreign body in the ear, like a small rubber piece, eraser piece, or a small glass bead, or a small button, or small these button cells, things like that, even seeds. So these foreign bodies should be very, very carefully managed. People killed patients by their negligent handling of these cases. They appear very simple, particularly in children. If a child is brought with a foreign body history, If it is seen, it is round and small and the child cooperates, then you can do a gentle syringing. How do you do syringing? Syringing always should be done by a sterile water. This is the ear syringe. By a sterile water, the water should be lukewarm. It should be, the temperature should be same as that of the blood. If you use hotter than this or colder than this, it induces convection and conduction currents inside the inner ear fluids. Patient will have an attack of vertigo. So to prevent that, we always use water at the body temperature. Now, if you do gently, as depicted in the picture, the stream should be directed towards one of the walls of the external canal, but not directly onto the tympanic membrane. Why? Otherwise, you may rupture the tympanic membrane, especially if there is past history of injury to the pinna, injury to the ear, or there is otitis media with a healed perforation. That will give a very easily. So, we should be extremely careful. Now, live insects, both in children as well as adults, sometimes they go into the ear and produce intense pain in the middle of the ear. How would you manage? Simple. First and foremost thing is, you should kill the insect by asphyxia. How will you do it? What is the easily available material? Water. Just instill water. Fill the entire pinna with water. Wait for 5 minutes. The insect will die with asphyxia. Once the insect dies with asphyxia, then you can do syringing or take a small hook and hook it out. Beware, in children, no surgery without general anesthesia. Always, if you have to remove a foreign body from the nose or a foreign body from the ear, it should be done under general endotracheal anesthesia. It's a dictum. Next is the automycosis. What is automycosis? Automycosis is fungal infection of the ear. So on the left side, you may see the semi-solid material which is having a wet newspaper appearance. This is the Aspergillus niger, classically seen. On the right side, it is the whitish semi-solid material. It is Candida albicans. Treatment is same. First and foremost is maintenance of oral hygiene is the sheet anchor of the treatment of automycosis. How do we do it? Once again, do gentle syringing, remove all the debris, and with a small cotton wick, gently dry the ear. For heaven's sake, for cleaning the ear or for drying the ear, never use so-called earbuds. They do more harm than good. Next is the furunculosis. What is a furuncle? Furuncle is nothing but staphylococcal infection of the hair follicle. Where are the hair follicles situated? Hair follicles situated on the outer 1/3 of the external ear. So, when there is a furuncle in the ear, it is very, very painful. Out of the furuncle in the nose and furuncle in the ear, furuncle in the nose is very dangerous simply because the infection can directly spread to the cavernous sinus and produce fatality. Especially if you apply pressure and manipulate and squeeze everything. There are no valves in the veins that connect the veins of the nose and the cavernous sinus. So infection readily enters the cavernous sinus. Thanks for the modern antibiotics, we rarely see cases of cavernous sinus thrombosis secondary to this furunculosis of the nose. Compared to furunculosis of the nose, furuncle in the ear is safe. But This is more painful because the infection or the abscess formation is there is no place for it to expand. So there will be intense pressure on the perichondrium and subsequently to the periosteum, and patient will have severe pain. How do we treat? Treatment is antibiotics and painkillers, plus you can give what is known as IG, that is ethiol glycerine. Ethiol glycerine ear drops. You can take a small wick, dip it in the ethiol glycerine ear drops, and keep in the external canal, either by the patient himself or herself, or by the doctor, and keep it for say about half an hour or 1 hour. The edema will subside and pain will automatically subside. If there is a very, very prominent swelling and it is fluctuating, you can give a small nick and drain it. Furunculosis is an example of localized otitis externa. In contrast to that, there is what is known as diffuse otitis externa. Diffuse otitis externa, it is as the word implies, is the inflammation of the whole skin of the external canal. Generally, it is contact allergic dermatitis that is responsible for this. So some people will instill all sorts of things into the ear which are not suitable for it, and as an allergic reaction, patients will develop diffuse otitis externa. Sometimes even conventional ear drops also may produce this condition. So the treatment is, if it is allergic, anti-allergic drugs, antihistaminics. If there is infection, we can give a topical ointment with say like gentamicin or sofamicin ointment with or without steroid, and do a local debridement. Now, most common complaint with patient comes to you is wax, impacted cerumen. Impacted cerumen is, as we know, it is colorless, odorless, liquid. It is secreted by the ceruminous glands, which are modified sweat glands inside the external canal. So without our notice, normally the cerumen will flow out of the ears. Only in selected individuals, especially when the external canal is not straight and tortuous, this cerumen gets accumulated, gets solidified, and slowly it gets impacted, giving rise to pain, especially after a bath. How do we manage? Simple symptomatic treatment with painkillers and instill wax solvents like glycerin or olive oil or coconut oil and with soda bicarb. So if you put them as frequently as possible, the whole wax will get liquefied. But keep in mind, removal of wax is not very simple. In fact, there is nothing like simple in medicine and surgery. Many years ago, Sir William Osler said, there is nothing like simple in medicine and surgery. So once you soften the wax, you do the gentle syringing or gentle hooking out. Now, there is another condition called keratosis obturans. What is keratosis obturans? Keratosis obturans, it is characterized by accumulation of wax, discriminant epithelial cells, and granulation tissue, some amount of cholesterol into the external canal, giving rise to agonizing pain. Now, let me remind you, external canal is the only skin-lined cul-de-sac in the body. It is lined by squamous epithelium. And the skin in the external canal is not like skin anywhere else in the body. It has got some peculiar characteristic features like The desquamation takes place as usual like elsewhere in the body, but the desquamated cells, they are carried centrifugally outside without our knowledge. In this particular condition, keratosis obturans, there will be excessive desquamation of the cells with poor migration. As a result, these cells will get accumulated inside. It will give rise to very severe pain. And sometimes the keratotic material is so heavy, it may extend into the middle ear, producing even facial paralysis. It can extend to the mastoid. It may extend even to the neck and intracranium also. So it is mandatory to have a CT scan study before handling these patients. And if there is no severe extension, then you can curate out this material under general anesthesia. But this condition can always recur, so follow up the patient periodically. Sometimes patients will be complaining severe itching in the ears. If you examine, there will be dandruff, otherwise known as seborrhea. It is characterized by a small whitish flakes over the scalp as well as over the ear. So treatment is treatment of the seborrhea, that is by means of selenium sulfide, that is Selsun, frequent head baths and all, and keep the ear dry and clean. You may have dermatitis of the auricle, especially these cosmetics, jewelry, and these hair dyes and all. Sometimes they may produce allergic reaction, and it may produce allergic otitis. So treatment is avoidance of allergen and antihistamine. There may be what is known as neurodermatitis. The patient will complain of intense itching in the ears. And if you see, there may be a little evidence that some eczema type of reaction. But patient complains of intense itching, all because of psychological disturbance. So apart from treating the eczema, you should take the help of a psychiatrist to treat the patient as a whole. This condition called otitis externa hemorrhagica, as the word implies, there will be hemorrhagic lesions in the external canal, sometimes encountered during epidemics of flu. Sometimes this is associated with bullous lesions over the tympanic membrane also. It is called meningitis bullosa. Treatment is symptomatic, and if there is suspicion of infection, you have to give antibiotic also along with painkillers. Now this condition is called herpes zoster oticus. As you see, vesicular lesions in the pinna extending onto the tympanic membrane also. This is because of the infection by zoster varicella virus. This condition is also called Ramsay-Hunt syndrome. It is characterized by vesicular lesions in the external canal, pain, sometimes vertigo, and there may be hearing loss. And if the lesion extends into the jugular bulb region, there may be multiple cranial palsies also. So treatment is by antiviral drug like acyclovir, which should be given 800 milligrams 6-hourly for about 2 weeks in an adult, along with painkillers and antibiotics if you suspect an infection. It is best to treat this condition under the supervision of a dermatologist. This is one of the most important conditions in the external ear, that is malignant otitis externa. The word malignant otitis externa is a misnomer because It is neither malignant nor it stops at the external ear. Still we continue to use it just because of tradition. The exact word is necrotizing otitis externa. More precise, it is the skull base meningitis, skull base osteomyelitis. This happens in individuals which have uncontrolled diabetes and immunocompromised individuals. That means patients who are on steroid therapy for a long time and who are all on the the drugs after say the renal transplantation and all. These people will have poor immunological status. They develop this condition. The offending organism is usually Pseudomonas. So the pain will be very, very severe. There will be discharge and the entire external canal is swollen as in this picture. And there may be soft tissue swelling around the ear. There will be facial paralysis and there will be paralysis of other cranials also. And slowly the infection spreads into the skull base and patient will be suffering very, very heavily. You should admit the patient to the hospital and then you continue controlling the diabetes and give antibiotics, preferable antibiotics, ticarcillin or third generation cephalosporins intravenously 1 to 2 grams 6 hourly along with an aminoglycoside followed by oral quinoline, ciprofloxacin 750 milligrams for a long period, as long as 3 months. If the condition doesn't respond, if the condition is very, very severe, you may have to do surgery and debridement of the all the necrotized tissue. As a whole, this condition is having a poor prognosis unless we attend in time. There may be acquired meatal atresia. Suppose there is a laceration of the pinna or laceration of the ear canal, we just treat it with painkillers and things like that and do a mild repair and all and forget about it. But once it heals, the external canal may become very, very narrow and there may be atresia, stenosis. Suppose you leave it like that, what happens? There will be hearing loss. Not only that, the usual discomation will not happen. Discharge of the wax will not happen, wax got accumulated and the patient may have pain. So, always take care to prevent meatal atresia when you repair the pinna as well as the lacerations that involve the external canal. You have to keep an ear pack and you have to follow it up, changing it and treating symptomatically. Now tumors. Tumors form a very important part of the lesions of the external canal. It may be benign or malignant. The benign tumors are the osteomata, osteomas. If they are multiple, we call them as exostosis. If they are single, we call them as cancellous lesions. Usually, children, people who swim in cold waters, they suffer from this exostosis. If it is troubling, it is obscuring the drumhead and giving the hearing loss, then you can operate and then chisel out the osteoma. If the condition is very severe, you may have to go postorally and remove them and do the drilling. And this is the picture of a lady with basal cell carcinoma, whom I have operated recently. She came with a very extensive lesion involving and destroying the whole pinna. And I did a subtotal resection of the temporal bone, and the plastic surgeon colleague has put a trapezius flap. This is the post-operative picture. Next most important condition is squamous cell carcinoma. Squamous cell carcinoma, it does occur. Previously, these cases are managed very poorly. If a condition like this, we can do a wide resection, excise the whole pinna and do away with it. It's fine. But if the squamous cell carcinoma occurs in the extrantic canal, then we should treat it very, very carefully, because this particular lesion in the extrantic canal may involve the cartilage or may involve the bone. So if there is only cartilage involvement and there is not much of bone involvement, then you can do what is known as a partial temporal bone resection. Partial temporal bone resection, that is, the tympanic part of the temporal bone can be excised along with the drum head and put a graft. But if the lesion extends into the middle ear cavity, with or without facial paralysis, without involving the medial wall of the middle ear, then you have to do a subtotal dissection of the temporal bone. Nothing less than subtotal dissection of the temporal bone. Because the lesion has to be addressed very, very intensively. Previously, for these cases, they used to do a mastectomy and then leave him alone. These people used to have a very terrible pain and very rapid downhill course and die in agony. Now things are very clear. You have to do a subtotal dissection of the temporal bone. That means entire temporal bone except the petrous part. We excise very carefully, and then we subject these individuals to radiotherapy. Radiotherapy alone will not treat this condition. This is the picture of a retracted tympanic membrane. As you all know, one of the important constituents of the middle ear cavity is air. The pressure both inside and outside the tympanic membrane is same. It should be same. If the tympanic membrane pressure outside is more or inside is less, the tympanic membrane is retracted, giving rise to hearing loss, as in this case. It will take a funnel shape. Now this is a case of granular meningitis. This granular meningitis, we classically see discharge and the granular tissue over the tympanic membrane. There is no perforation of the tympanic membrane. Treatment is by antibiotic ear drops and do some toilet, that is gently clean with a sterile ear swab. Sometimes there will be traumatic rupture of the tympanic membrane. We see quite often the husbands slapping on the ears of their wives. Sometimes it happens in schools also, the teacher slapping. Nowadays it is not seen. It may be accidental or incidental, whatever it may be. These people will have a slight bleeding from the ear, and as you see the TM, there will be perforation of the tympanic membrane. This is called traumatic rupture of the tympanic membrane. As a whole, no ear drops should be instilled into the ear, and we have to give antibiotics and painkillers, and you have to do thorough searching, thorough evaluation about hearing. Sometimes there may be dislocation of the ossicular chain, and sometimes there may be sensorineural hearing loss also. So treat him symptomatically, treat her symptomatically with antibiotics, painkillers, no ear drops, no water should go inside. Just keep a little sterile cotton in the ear and follow her after 2 or 3 weeks. The perforation will be nicely healing. If the perforation doesn't heal, then you have to do a laryngoplasty. Sometimes the negative pressure in the middle ear cavity is so much that the entire drum is withdrawn and there will be atelectatic parts. In some areas, it will be plastered to the middle ear cavity. If you see patients in this particular stage, you have to do what is known as myringotomy and grommet insertion, which we take up in subsequent classes for treatment of glue ear. And last but not the least, this is a condition called tympanosclerosis. What is tympanosclerosis? Deposition of the hyaline material or the tympanic membrane, which subsequently gets calcified. So this is something like scarring of the eardrum. So if it is minimal, then it doesn't matter, we can leave it alone. But if it is significant, you can do anterior tympanotomy and carefully remove the tympanosclerotic flake. Sometimes it is so severe, it extends beyond the tympanic membrane, extends into the middle ear cavity, and it involves the ossicular chain, and there may be ossicular fixation giving rise to severe sensorineural hearing loss. In these patients, you are justified in doing a myringotomy and very carefully removing all the tympanosclerotic flakes and put a small piece of silastic sheet to prevent the recurrence of the this particular tympanosclerosis. It may even produce stapedovestibular ankylosis like in otosclerosis. So at a second stage, sometimes you may have to do a stapedectomy also, like in otosclerosis. If the patient is having severe hearing loss and you cannot operate, then you may have to do a you may have to give a hearing aid. Thank you. అయిపోయింది వచ్చేస్తుంది.